I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
Certified cat lady Laura Bricker, you have been using Pretty Litter, have you not?
I have, yes, for my 3 cats.
Now, we know that when the cats do their business in the litter, it changes colors, right? What colors have you been seeing?
Well, I have been a little worried. So it's supposed to stay, I think yellow, green, blue is like a normal range. And my cats have been eating a lot of chipmunks recently, but we are still in the normal range. So I'm still seeing the normal colors. They have a nice little color guide on the back of the bag to, let you know what you should be alarmed if you see. And all you have to do when you go down and you check and you scoop it out, you scoop out the poopy parts and then stir it up and it just disappears.
So how is your house smelling these days?
You know what? It's smelling pretty good. I have to tell you, I actually forgot to clean the litter box one day this week and I was like, oh shoot. And I didn't remember because guess what? It didn't smell when I walked in my front door because that has really good odor control. So not that I advocate skipping cleaning your litter box, but if you do, your house isn't going to smell like one.
Yeah, you won't have to forget about your kitty litter either because Pretty Litter gets shipped right to your door in a small, lightweight bag that lasts an entire month. So make the switch to Pretty Litter today by visiting prettylitter.com and use promo code CRIME for 20% off your first order. That's prettylitter.com, promo code CRIME for 20% off.
Check out Wild Fang, a feminist fashion brand that's here to take down the patriarchy and is committed to giving back. That's right, Kevin. Wild Fang is female-founded and women-run, offering gender-smashing styles that borrow from the boys. A percentage of every purchase at wildfang.com goes to charity, and they raise hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to fight for your rights. Go to wildfang.com and use code CRIME for 25% off. That's WILDFANG.com and use CRIME for 25% off. I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the podcast about serial, true crime, pop culture. And this week, we return to Manitowoc County as Netflix releases its long-awaited sequel to Making a Murderer. We'll discuss the documentary's inside look at the ongoing cases of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. Joining me to get that done is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Reporting for duty, Rebecca.
Also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, certified cat lady, and a lady who has no idea who the person who plays Olivia Benson is on SVU, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
That's me. I liked her hairstyle. That's all I know.
Oh, we know. We're going to get to that in just a second.
Oh,
and
dear.
Finally, our captain of woke cynicism, the brilliant author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, and our very own Kathleen Zellner buzzkill, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Word up.
Now, Laura, I just want to mention for our listeners, dropping a little bit later this week is an amazing episode of These Are Their Stories, the Law and Order podcast, hosted by Kevin Flynn and featuring me. And this week, you are our special guest.
I am. And I was in uncharted waters.
Well, we have a little clip to just demonstrate that, and we're going to drop it right here.
Favorite Law and Order detective team.
Of all the franchises, can you name Two detectives.
Or just tell us what they look like.
Well, I can't. So I looked it up because I'm going to tell you that my favorite detective is Mariska Hargitay because I like her. Hey, how do you say her name?
Hargitay.
Mariska Hargitay.
Okay, let me say whatever her name is. You know what? I'm going to say it's the lady with the hairstyle that I always want and that will never work on my hair because my hair is too curvy and wavy. And I'm like, I really like her hair.
So yes, Laura, you were still a wonderful guest, and thank you very much for being on our other show. We really appreciate it.
You know, I'm just mixing it up a little bit. That's all.
All right. A little piece of news dropped this week. I just want to get each of your reactions to it quickly. Netflix, which I think doesn't have a limit on how long they'll let something go, has decided to end its great series American Vandal after its second season. Kevin, what did you think when you heard this news?
I was a little disappointed, but I can see sort of the joke has run its course. It still was two very great seasons, but why not just leave them wanting more?
Yeah, Toby, what do you think? Do you agree with Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, it would be too bad if the third season was not good.
Yeah.
So, it just ends up being a really good series.
That's true. Laura, do you agree?
Yeah, I'm down with that. I liked it. It was entertaining. It's not going to be the end of my life if I don't see a third season.
I really loved American Vandal. I think it is great as standing alone as it is with two near perfect seasons. And also, there does come a point where a TV show involving alleged high school kids just looks stupid when the kids who play the kids are like 35 years old. So probably a good thought there. But American Vandal, we will miss you. You were pretty great. All right. Well, what do you guys think? We have a lot to talk about tonight. Should we just get right into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Enter the cellos. Netflix has released Making a Murderer 2, the follow-up to the 2016 smash hit docuseries that captured the imagination of criminal justice reformers. The newest 10-episode series covers the years since the original series and shows how the success of Making a Murderer has both helped and hurt Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey's efforts to win their freedom.
Some people, they feel really bad and sad and everything happened to me. And sometimes it feels like you want to cry, but you can't. Kind of shocked sometimes. I didn't think all of these people would care.
Instead of discussing the 10 episodes, we're going to break the show up into two storylines. We're going to be talking about Stephen Avery and his, I'm just going to say it, amazing lawyer, Kathleen Zellner, in the second half of the podcast. But in this half, we're going to talk about Brendan Dassey and his team. It was Dassey's confession that gave prosecutors the narrative of the how and why Teresa Halbach died. But when America saw the video of his interrogation in the original Making a Murderer, it became clear to just about everyone that the learning disabled teen was guessing the details until investigators said he got it right.
Why would someone falsely confess to a crime that they didn't commit?
They wanted this information in the worst way. So Brendan thinks if I tell them what they want to hear, I'm going to go home.
And we are going to be discussing extensive spoilers of the second season of Making a Murderer. So if you just want to basically skip this whole podcast and go to our thumbs up or thumbs down review of season 2, check the time in the show notes. We'll put the timing there for when we do that thumbs up or thumbs down review. Now, early in Making a Murderer 2, we're introduced to two lawyers, Laura Nyrider and Stephen Drizin. They work at the Pritzker School of Law's Wrongful Convictions of Youth Center, and they are wonderful. In fact, we hear that Nyrider was a student of Drizin's, and Dassey's case was the first one she was ever assigned when she was a law student, and she's basically made it her life's work to defend this kid. I know that every time these two were on the screen, especially Laura Nyrider, who did most of the talking for the team, we know what's happened in this case. We've covered on this podcast. I felt an unbelievable amount of dread every time I saw these optimistic, smart, and earnest lawyers on screen. How did you feel, Kevin? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I like them. I mean, for the documentary, they're new characters, which we don't have a lot of. And I was really inspired by them, and to realized that they weren't Johnny-come-latelys, that this was something that they felt very strongly about and that they had been working on it for a long, long time. And they were an emotional touch point because you're right, we do know ultimately what's going to happen with this case, the disappointment. And so to see them happy and then see, Brendan talking about getting out and what he's going to be doing. He's going to, he wants to go get some French fries because he hasn't had French fries in a million years. It ends up being, I'm going to say, dramatically satisfying because it's so emotional.
Toby, what do you think of this legal team, Nyrider and Drizzen? Did you like them as much as I did? And did you also feel that dread when you would see them on the screen?
Yeah, no, I think they're totally likable. They seem to have the right reasons behind what they're doing. I just, especially for her, I just worry that, she's so emotionally invested in this. And I guess there's no way not to be somewhat emotionally invested, but you don't really see very much of it, but it must have been devastating. The setback after setback after setback. Defeat snatched from the jaws of victory. It was interesting to see just like how, thoroughly they prepare in terms of reading decisions that each one of the judges has made on similar cases, and then arguing in front of different groups of people who are acting as judges and, consulting with various experts and things like that. So there's all this time and effort goes into what ends up being in the end. Like, it seems like an almost, at least for me, and I guess we'll get to this in a minute, but when they do the actual hearing in front of the full group, it seems like you could have just not even had the hearing.
Right.
It seems like all the decisions had been made before anybody even went into the room.
Yeah, it's like Kafkaesque nightmare, right? So, Laura, Kathleen Zellner's take on Dassey's legal team is an interesting one. She seems to suggest that they're basically just going about their job the wrong way because she's had so much success. We hear in the documentary she's overturned 20 wrongful convictions and she's had so much success. And she basically says what they're doing is getting stuck in the law instead of telling courts a story. What do you think of that take?
I thought it was interesting that they actually showed her critiquing those lawyers. I thought, oof, I was like, how's that going to go across when they end up watching this documentary? I can see her point, which she's got her way that she does things, and that's the way that she has found that works. I guess in terms of telling a story, to me, I feel like that would be more relevant if you were trying to convince a jury instead of trying to convince a panel of justices, because I feel like the panel of justices is going to be, you would think, more reliant on the law and how it relates to the case as opposed to the story. Although, I do feel like in listening to it, I felt like when Brandon's attorney, Laura, was arguing, I felt like, what Toby was saying was she was just so emotionally invested that I felt like she kind of lost the ability at one point to kind of effectively argue because she was just so exasperated and upset with the line of questioning. But I guess I was just surprised that Kathleen Zellner was so, I shouldn't be surprised because she's very bold, but that she was so bold to critique them in this documentary the way that she did. Because at first I'm like, wait, is she saying what I think she's saying?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, she is saying what I think she's saying.
She's saying she would do it differently.
Going.
Yeah, she's saying she would do it differently, right?
Yeah, she's saying that. But I agree with Laura that at these appeals hearings, you're supposed to be arguing the law. This is specifically what this is. Telling them a story is like what you would do. Obviously, Kathleen Zellner has been doing appellate work for a long time, but I don't think that needs to be the case. I think that you do have to argue the law. I found that based on the judges who were not going with Brendan on this, right, that those judges, based on their questioning and on their decisions, seem to start from the point of presumed guilt. Now, of course, he has been found guilty. He no longer enjoys the presumption of innocence. But as far as the argument goes, it sounds like they assume that he's guilty. It's kind of like it doesn't matter. He's guilty. He confessed it. Which I don't think. I don't think whether or not he is truly innocent, or actually guilty is the argument.
Right.
It's about the process of the law. So he could be the killer, and could be saying everything accurately, but if the confession is involuntary and not coerced, that's different.
But
if they was coerced, they never raised their voice. They're not talking about coercion.
Exactly.
They're talking about something else, involuntarily given. It just seems like they came at it from a completely different way that just isn't the way I saw it.
Well, here's the lesson that I took away that I hope everybody listening to this podcast who maybe is not super political can think about. You know how you hear all the time about the power of elected officials to appoint judges? These appeals, these federal appeals court judges are appointed at the very high levels of government, right? This is where people talk about the Supreme Court a lot. They don't think a lot about these appeals courts. And these judges in these appeals courts are really like not just making, like shaping laws, but they are really, they have the lives of real people in their hands in cases like this. And I think it's just important to think about, not that like one political side would do it one way, another would another way, but when you listen to the arguments that these judges make, and when you listen to that, what was it, the Solicitor General of the state talking about the separation of federal versus state and the powers here, you realize this is a very political process for these judges in a way. And I just think it's something worth thinking about. And it's like a bigger idea that the documentary doesn't point to, but I know it's what made...
When the Wisconsin DA, when he was outside the courtroom and gave that quick interview, he talked all about sort of which was never argued by anybody.
It's like, what are you talking
about? There was never that argument made by anybody.
It was very strange, and it really pointed out really how political a lot of this is.
I guess I missed that because I was distracted by Ken Kratz giving a press conference out there. Like,
let's talk about that because Ken Kratz does appear not so much in the Avery part of the story. But
sure he does.
He does, but he makes his grand in-person appearance in this documentary during the Dassey part of the story at this courthouse. And I really love what Dassey's legal team says. Like, we are in a hallowed place.
A place where generally the best lawyers practice, the arguments that are made are elevated. It's a very dignified place. And I think when the arguments were happening in court, it was at a very high level and it respected the process. And then we came downstairs and there was all this commotion, and I went over and walked over to see what was happening. And Ken Kratz was holding a press conference.
And then he comes and gives this circus of a press conference where he's promoting but not promoting his new book in the lobby on a case that he's no longer working on and that he's been like disgraced after leaving office for all this misconduct. Laura Bricker, how do you feel about the fact that Ken Kratz just won't frickin' go away?
You know what? It's motivating me to keep going to my boxing class. Oh my God. I can't stand it when because he shows up and I'm like, why are you still here? You are not involved in this anymore. Nobody wants to see your face or listen to your swarmy little voice at this point, Ken Kratz. And then the next time they interviewed me, he was at CrimeCon. I'm like, what is this? Like, it's really frustrating to see the way he's inserting himself. Like, they did talk about that a little bit ethically, that it was pretty unusual, the way that he was maintaining this connection and commenting on this case and, move on.
Rebecca, I'm getting a reading on the Richter scale.
Laura, what is your rating on the Richter scale when it comes to Ken Kratz?
It's higher than Len Kaczynski because at least he had a cat in his picture.
Oh, God.
I'm saying Ken Kratz, I was just like, every time he started talking, I was like, oh, like it's like turning into the Hulk or something watching him.
Now, Toby, you sent me a couple interesting notes about Kratz. You're curious as to what he was like in high school, and you now want to go to CrimeCon to meet him. Can you tell us why? He's such an odd guy that I think it would be pretty amusing to have a beer with him and just like kind of get his thoughts on life. Yeah, it's what Lars said. I just don't. I mean, I'm not sure what else that guy's got going on, so. It doesn't surprise me much that given like his track record and stuff, that he is milking this for as much as it's worth. I mean, you just think back to the ridiculous press conferences he had while the case was ongoing. He's like that friend who you don't want to run into at parties because they're always acting like totally inappropriately. And it's just like, Jesus. And that's Ken Kratz, but with the world instead of just at a party. Yeah. Like all those guys are just as freaking odious as they originally were. Like you want to think you're remembering it wrong, right? And I mean, I wrote this note and, it's kind of like throughout the series. It's like the return of all these incredibly slappable characters that you remember so much from season 1. You've got Ken Kratz, you've got Len Kaczynski, you have that Nancy Grace lady who runs the lab, you have Coburn, the super smarmy and shady cop. How are all these people in power? Like, they all have all the power, and it's like, they really are just as bad as I remember them being. It's really amazing. And it's like, you want to think, because I know we'll talk about it in a minute, like the credibility issues with the one-sidedness of this film. You want to think like, oh, maybe I'm remembering this wrong. And then as soon as Ken Kratz opens his frickin' mouth, you're like, oh, I'm not remembering him wrong at all. Now, Kevin, give me your take. Len Kaczynski also makes a return. Present day Len Kaczynski.
Yeah, too short and too long at the same time.
What do you mean?
He's a guy who deserves to get slapped in the face. He was such a big part of Brendan getting railroaded.
Yep.
I think we are just briefly reminded that the federal appeals did not, look further into the ineffective assistance of counsel claim. Long term, the whole thing with the involuntary confession has run its course. It can't be, the Supreme Court won't look at it, so that's that. And you wonder about what other legal avenues do they have, and maybe it's looking for reconsideration on that,
right?
On the ineffective assistance of counsel, because he was definitely working against his client,
right? And but they do imply late in the series that if new evidence, like if something happens in the Avery case, it could help him. They imply that. They don't say it directly, but that's sort of implied. One thing I want to talk about stylistically. We see it twice on the 3-panel courtroom scene and then on the full panel courtroom scene. This very wacky, like Super Friends, 1970s Super Friends style recreation of these scenes where we just see unmoving drawings with audio. Toby, what'd you think of that way of presenting this audio-only courtroom scene?
Make the mouths move, man.
It's Netflix, for God's sakes.
Do a Beavis and Butthead or something. Like, I get what the issue is that you've got audio and you've got to show people who's talking, and how do you do it in a way that's not just putting names on a blank screen, or on the other hand, my suggestion, which is like, totally ham it up. It's not elegant, but it does what it needs to do, which is to let you know who's talking at various times in a way that's not quite as mind-numbing as just putting a name up on a screen.
Right, and we also got pictures of the justices, and Laura in the 3-panel justice situation, and we saw the same justices later in the larger panel. There's two awesome women, the one with the big hair and the other one. Mm-hmm. I found myself like reacting viscerally when I would see the drawing of the dissenting guy from the 3-judge panel.
Hated him.
With the steely blue eyes.
Yes, he just looked evil.
He looked like Peter Graves from Mission Impossible.
But it was pretty creative. They had a lot of creative use of graphics in this second season that actually really worked to help illustrate how the court system worked and how the appeals process worked, and
where
was
the
helpful.
quarry was.
Yeah.
I just kept thinking about the season premiere of Modern Family this season when Mitchell is trying his first criminal case and he's super pissed because the sketch artist has made him look ugly in the courtroom sketches. And it turns out that he was the Airbnb client that they screwed over.
Against him, yes.
But ultimately, Brendan Dassey's case gets the overturned verdict, gets vacated. It goes to one court that upholds it. The second large panel in a tiny minuscule number of cases, for some reason, decides to take up this case, which is why I believe it is a political thing. I really, really do. Upholds the vacated thing that the lower court did. Goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court doesn't take it. Case done. The legal avenues for Brendan Dassey, as we know, are over. So
on this argument.
So do we all agree at this point in the series, and I know we've talked about this and the show, I think we all have feelings about Brendan Dassey's lack of culpability. We've talked about that before. I feel that this is a unmitigated American tragedy, Brendan Dassey's story. Where are you guys on that?
Yeah, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. And I think the thing that really brought it home at the end of his part of the case is when they play the audio of him reading that letter to his supporters.
Dear people in the world, thank you for listening to me. It means a lot to know there are many people who believe in me. I am innocent of the rape and murder of Teresa Halbach. My confession is false. It always has been.
And it's so earnest, but it also, listening to him read it and thinking about him writing it, you recognize, it's a pretty simple letter. And it sort of drives home the point of who he is and why it's so tragic that he is still in jail.
What about you, Toby?
It's obviously like he doesn't belong in jail. I mean, I think that's it's hard to question that. What I think is kind of interesting, at least for me to think about, is like why did it work this way? There's some value to the idea that it'd be hard to overturn serious convictions like that, in that if you are, as a system, putting that much faith in the idea that, a trial in front of a jury is going to end up almost all of the time in the right verdict. Like, I don't agree that is the case, but if that was the case and that's sort of what you're putting your faith in our justice system, then it seems as though it should be difficult to overturn those decisions. And while I think this is like an egregious case, like right now I'm reading for the Deep Dive Book Club, reading Homicide by David Simon, which has a lot of stuff about interrogations. And these detectives who are in this book are the protagonists, but it's definitely like they want to get the stupid people, the naive people in there, because of those people can be manipulated into making confessions.
Right.
Whereas the smart and the savvy just keep their mouths shut. It's part of the system. This is a particularly egregious case of it, and it's a case that's gotten a ton of publicity. So it seems different, but I'm not sure how much of an outlier it is as far as people with sort of the learning deficits that Brendan has when they get in trouble, like what happens. And that's why you see, there's always these controversies about these people with very low IQs being executed.
Right.
And you wonder how much that played a part in their being on death row.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that both of you said. And I think that another element that we get introduced to, which was absent from Making a Murderer season 1, is Brendan's dad, who was not a character in season 1. We meet him in season 2. He seems like a very nice man who loves feeding his birds in their birdhouses. He's got a lot of inexplicable fencing around his garage and property. But to see that, that he has this larger family, and you see all those gifts in his house that people have sent him, and you see that his mom has his room ready for him when he comes home. And yeah, it's an unmitigated American tragedy. Right, Kevin?
Absolutely. I am rage walking thinking about this. It just seems so self-evident that what had happened with that confession was not the way it should be, and that it ended up changing his life. It changed the course of this investigation, and I think that if there are holes in the Stephen Avery case, based on the state's claim of what happened, it's in part because they got this false confession out of Brendan Dassey that shaped the narrative of how puzzle pieces are supposed to fit together.
I don't think that Making a Murderer season 2, that was one thing that was missing, is they didn't remind us that is where that bullshit story came from. It came from this. Mm-hmm. Everything they said about Avery came from this. If we're all willing to say this confession was total bullshit, then we should be willing to say that everything we think about what Stephen Avery may have done to Teresa Halbach is also bullshit.
Yeah, it's more than just, he said that, he went under the hood and his DNA was on the latch. And it's not the fact that, they fed him, they set him up and led him into that answer. It's more about, then that happens and then, there was a rape. There really isn't any evidence of a rape.
Right.
So do you even know if that happened? That had to suddenly fit into the evidence that they were coming up with. I don't know. It gets my panties in a bunch, which is why I need Tommy John underwear.
Yes, that's an excellent and very classy transition, Kevin.
Hey, the holidays are approaching fast, and now is not the time for nutcrackers.
That's right.
Thankfully, Tommy John is the revolutionary clothing company that's redefining comfort for men and women. Tommy John underwear sports a no wedgie guarantee. Comfortable, stay put waistband, and a range of fabrics that are luxurious, soft, feather light, moisture wicking, breathable, and designed to move with you. Oh, Rebecca, you're pulling out your thong?
I am. It's not a thong. It's just regular Tommy John, amazing underwear.
Okay.
I love them.
They have a no wedgie guarantee. You can't pull it out that way.
I just pulled it out that way. It did not give me a wedgie.
Oh my gosh, you're right. It doesn't give a wedgie.
They're so stretchy and breathable.
Yeah.
You of the Winnie the Pooh is telling her not to pull it out? Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah. Remember when Brendan was like, I can't wait to go home. I have my own underwear?
Exactly.
Well, somebody should be sending him some Tommy
I
John
agree. I will send him some when he gets out.
underwear. Yes, or you can even give him a gift with the limited edition holiday gifts. There's something for everyone on your list, naughty or nice. Give the gift of mind-blowing comfort this holiday season with limited edition holiday gifts from Tommy John. Plus, save 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/crime.
Crime.
That's TommyJohn.com/crime for
Crime.
20% off. Tommy John, no adjustment needed.
What else you got, Kevin?
Well, we're also sponsored by Brooklinen.
Oh, we love Brooklinen.
Named the winner of the best online bedding category
Deserved.
by Good Housekeeping. Brooklinen is the fastest growing bedding brand in the world. They now have over 20,000 five-star reviews.
That's a lot.
I think at least 4 of them came from this panel.
I may have done more than one, so maybe 5.
These are the sheets that are 5-star hotel quality sheets, and you get to have them every day because you get to have this luxury sheet without the luxury markup. Their method, eliminating the middleman.
Yeah.
It's also, part of what makes the sheets really good are the fabrics that they're using and the fibers.
Yeah.
Go to their website and read this story. It's really interesting about the cotton fiber. Essentially, they use a longer thread so that it has a smoother feel. So, the way they manufacture the sheet itself is wonderful, and they've got a lot of great styles to choose from. Our Brooklinen sheets are the best, most comfortable sheets that we've ever slept on. Brooklinen is giving an exclusive offer just for our listeners.
Great.
No other podcast, just ours.
Tell me.
Get $20 off and free shipping when you use the promo code CWO.
CWO.
At brooklinen.com. Brooklinen is so sure that you will love your new sheets that they offer a risk-free 60-night satisfaction guarantee and a lifetime warranty on all of their sheets and comforters. But the only way to get $20 off and free shipping is to use promo code CWO at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN. See, it's a pun, brooklinen.com. Promo code CWO. Brooklinen. These really are the best sheets ever.
And they come with an awesome tote bag because the sheets come in an awesome little tote bag.
You can repurpose it as a tote bag.
I use it as my lunch bag, a little Brooklinen tote bag. Right, Laura?
I do. I have my little tote bag. I don't use it for that, but I use it. It's really handy. I use it in summer for carrying things around when you're going to the beach or something.
I know. And it says Brooklyn on it, and that's cool. People think you're cool. I'm sorry.
Cool.
It's a cool tote bag. I feel like they should talk about that in their ad. If they're listening, we'll talk about that.
We'll even throw in a tote bag and an apple pie with every purchase.
It's like listening to public radio. Get a freaking tote bag. All right, moving on. The main focus of Making a Murderer 2 remains Stephen Avery, the Wisconsin man wrongly convicted of rape who later was convicted of murdering a young photographer named Teresa Hallback. We rejoin Avery in the months after Making a Murderer's release. The notoriety hasn't won him an exoneration, but it did win him the services of Kathleen Zellner, one of the country's most tenacious wrongful conviction lawyers.
Prominent attorney Kathleen Zellner, best known for overturning wrongful convictions, has taken the Avery case.
I have one goal, and that's to overturn the conviction of Stephen Avery.
Zellner gets very hands-on, conducting her own testing and investigation into Avery's case. Though she finds a new take on the physical evidence and settles on a different set of actors, her defense is the same. Someone other than Stephen Avery shot, dismembered, and burned the body of Teresa Hallback, and the local sheriff's office planted DNA to frame him.
There's a lot based on that bullet.
This is critical. There's an abundance of evidence. This could flip the whole case.
All right, there's some things I want to get out of the way at the beginning of this conversation because I don't want them to distract us from some of the other elements of the story. So let's just do it right now. Question 1. Kathleen Zellner. Do you love her, hate her, or something in between? And briefly explain why. Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you.
You know what? I went into this because my only experience with her was all of her tweets, preparing not to like her. I came out of it she's pretty badass. I'm waiting for her to have a glass of whiskey and a cigar. She shoots guns. She's pretty no nonsense. She's a little bit odd, but you know what? I appreciate the way that she approaches the cases and the enthusiasm. And I'm going to tell you one other reason why I really love her. I just checked her Twitter feed just now while we were chatting, and her most recent tweet says, "So the sweaty, sexting ex-prosecutor Ken Kratz, who has never met the likes of my experts, is blabbing again with junk science with a suspended law license." I'm like, yes. So I was like, that just makes me love her even more. The sweating, sexting, blabbing Ken Kratz. Thank you, Kathleen Zellner.
All right, Toby Ball. Kathleen Zellner, love her, hate her, or something in between, and briefly explain why.
I guess I'm somewhere in between. I disagree a little bit with Laura in that I think she's sort of a weird combination of no nonsense and complete nonsense at times. I kind of found some of the stuff that she was doing a little hard to take seriously. But at the same time, I mean, she comes across as a very sympathetic person, smart and resourceful and things like that. I have some questions about what she thought she was going to accomplish in this is what she actually ended up accomplishing. And I think she also does some stuff that I think is mostly for show. And I wonder if she would be doing it the same way if the cameras weren't on the whole time. But, so I'm kind of a mixed bag, although, if I had to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, I would definitely give a thumbs up.
Yeah, I'll agree with Laura that I went into this with one impression and left with another. And I even started the series with one impression with some of that earlier evidence we see, the brain fingerprinting, the sort of stuff that's less conventional. Then later, when it becomes a lot more solid, I found myself really getting in her corner. And even when she would say things that were provocative, when she would say, put somebody else in the frame, she would very reasonably say, this is a legal strategy. And I'm sorry if it is offensive to say, I think this other person may have done it, but that is how I will exonerate this man. And that's how it works. And then she has some quirks that I also love. I love it that she has a driver. I love that every single person in her office, like every single person in her office to a person is super attractive. Like that's like odd in a weird way that I kind of like, even though it makes me uncomfortable. Obviously, I love her clothing very much. I've talked about that a lot on Twitter. And, the way that she is at small moments, she's incredibly considerate, patient, and kind with Avery's family and with Avery himself on the phone. And then a small moment, Kevin, that really stuck out to me was when she went to file those papers at the courthouse and she had that throng of reporters following her. Like she knew it was going to be a scene. They planned for it. She shows up. She knows she's making a scene. But then the reporters want to interview her. And she said, you know what? Let's not do this in the office. Let's go outside because then we'll be in the way of other people who want to come in this office. That is not like Michael Avenatti showboating. That's actually like a person who has situational awareness, which speaks to a real heart. That is a small detail that I just picked up on. It made me that was the moment where I sort of switched to being full on Team Kathleen. Where are you with Kathleen, Kevin?
I'm in the middle, too. I mean, she's very accomplished, and so you have to respect her ability to work for her client. And she was definitely giving the best counsel that she can. I mean, I think she's footing the bill for all these tests and all these experts and whatnot. And she, I think she honestly believes in Stephen Avery's innocence. There's sometimes, though, I like the way Toby put it. She's like no nonsense and all nonsense at the same time. She would be talking about, some bit of evidence and say, oh, well, there's no other explanation for that except that they planted the DNA. And I'm like, no, there are other explanations for that. Just because there's no bone on the bullet, it's like, well, okay, well, maybe it did go through a fleshy part of the, that's an explanation. I'm not saying that's what it is.
Maybe this one went through her thigh, not through her head.
Yeah. Or again, you say, well, maybe that isn't the bullet, but somehow her DNA is on it. And it's just, I guess I wasn't crazy about all of the conclusions that she came to, especially the ones that ended up hurting the Dassey family. And I know you have to kind of go at where you think the evidence leads you in the advocacy for your client, but some of it kind of left a sour taste in my mouth.
All right. Well, let's talk about another thing that I want to get out of the way. That's going to be a tough subject. And that is the point of view of this documentary. A lot of people did not participate.
Oh, they show you that.
They show you that. And it is clearly way more one side than the other. And I believe, I'll just say it, I believe the filmmakers would have included more of the other side if they had access. I do believe that. I give them credit for at least showing who they tried to talk to, who wouldn't talk to them in every episode, because it does show that they would have. but obviously they were not getting that participation. So
I think that was the criticism of the first season.
Of course it was.
That,
So we get largely one side.
They address it right. Yeah.
So Kevin, do you think that makes this entire thing uncredible? Where are you on the one
No,
side?
not uncredible, but I mean, I think you're right. You don't have as complete a picture as you think. This is one of the criticisms we have with Serial this season, is that the police department has refused to cooperate with the podcast, so you don't get that point of view. And so a lot of times when we're talking about, this seems like one-sided, some of that is attributed to the fact that they're not participating in the message. So, can you really complain that it went someplace that you didn't think? So, I mean, I don't think the family necessarily is... Are they complaining? I don't think that they can complain about the direction of the documentary if they don't participate.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'll tell you, as somebody who's written true crime, along with you, Kevin, when people complain about your book or your movie or your article, but then when you had requested an interview and they refused the interview, there's nothing you can do except say what they have said publicly. There's nothing you can do except play tape of them walking in and out of things. There's nothing you can do except show recordings of them and what they've said on TV, which they did in this show. They showed on TV what the brother said. They showed, there's nothing else you can do. And I'm not saying the filmmakers don't have a point of view, because they clearly do, because they were attracted to this project, as we know, because they were attracted to Stephen Avery's story. I don't think it takes away all credibility. I think as long as you're aware of it, that's what matters. I know that Toby has strong feelings as he keeps trying to interrupt.
Yeah.
Go ahead and mansplain your feelings to us, Toby. Do it.
Yes. What you little ladies don't understand.
You little lady documentarians.
Wild Fang is not sending anything to Toby's house.
Yeah. No, I guess my feeling is I kind of disagree with you in that I think the idea that if you don't cooperate, then you're fair game. I think that
I didn't hear me say
I
that.
think they could have.
We didn't say fair game.
No,
They didn't
if
deride
this
the
is a journalistically reported story and you offer them the opportunity to comment and they choose not to comment, well, that's their decision. The story goes forward.
Nobody attacked the family. They just weren't in it.
I think the way in which what ends up happening is they are sort of uncritical of the other point of view. And I think the idea that just because one side doesn't talk to you, that you can't consider objections to what's being put forth on Avery and Dassey's behalf, I don't buy that as an argument. I think it's harder, but I think, an honest, if you're trying to give sort of an honest appraisal of the entire situation, that part of what you have to do is find a way to question what's going on with Zellner. And because, I mean, that was one of the things that I found frustrating is, so you're sort of following, and this is especially true with the Dassey side of things, but, also with Avery, is that when they get these setbacks, it's just like, oh, that sucks. It's so unjust. And I don't think you need to get somebody from the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department, or you need to get somebody from the Hallback family. I mean, there's plenty of other people you can get to comment on this stuff. They just choose not to.
I don't think that when somebody declines to participate, that it absolves the documentarian from doing an accurate portrayal of facts around them and what their perceptions may be. I do think, however, it forfeits their right to be credible when it says when they say they have a complaint about the direction it went or how something about them was portrayed. If they participated and they felt like everything was taken out of context, then they have a beef. So I hear what you're saying. I half agree with you.
So I'll give an example, and one is Teresa Hallback's roommate, that guy with the beard and the long hair.
Guy, yep.
And they're just like, oh, he didn't want to talk to us, and that seems suspicious. And it's like, well, no shit, he doesn't want to talk to you. If there's one lesson that this entire thing has taught you is, when you start talking, you get in trouble. I would do exactly the same thing. So when I take a look at this documentary, to me, it's a well-made, interesting documentary about one side of a post-conviction effort. But that's all that it is.
Laura, thoughts?
They reached out to people. They tried to get people to participate. these people knew this documentary was going forward. If they wanted to shape how they were portrayed, they could have spoken. And that's something I have run into so many times as a reporter. And it's very hard because, you try to be fair. And I always, even in difficult stories, would reach out to people. Hey, I'm writing this story. I know you probably don't want to say anything. This is what the story is going to say. If you want to participate, you need to say something. And people wouldn't. And then they would complain about how the story came out. And you're like, I gave you the opportunity. You didn't want to take part. The story's going, whether you are talking or not, because I have all this other information. So it's a very frustrating position to be in when you are putting something together, as a journalist. And obviously documentary, this has, a little bit more of an editorial slant, to put it mildly. But I didn't mind it as much because to me, it reminded me more of like The Staircase, where we had that very, that window into the defense world. And that's what we have here. We have this like window into the defense team on both sides and what's going into this case really from behind the scenes. So it's just it's that really in-depth perspective that we're getting here. And it is frustrating that everybody didn't take part.
So I think we've all said how we feel about this. I just want to tell one quick anecdote, which is not related to Making a Murderer, but reminds me of this, which is that it does seem sometimes in cases that are like sensational, that the people who are willing to like really put themselves out there are often like the worst actors. So in Making a Murderer, you've got Ken Kratz and Len Kaczynski who have no freaking problem being the spokespeople for the prosecution when they're both complete nutcases. And it reminds me a little bit of, in our state this week, there's a state lawmaker who's embroiled in controversy because he allegedly assaulted a porn filmmaker with whom he was making a porn film. And
yeah, they kind of buried the lead on this story. No, the lawmaker was making porn films.
Right, but he allegedly
and got
assaulted
mad
the
because
guy.
he didn't like his scene.
Right, and then his whole thing was, no, this is just coming up before the election, and there's literally footage of him making a porn film.
He's like, I was making tourism
that
movies.
you can never unsee.
Tourism of my dick.
And yet he's actually giving interviews to everyone. And so it's like, why are the bad actors always willing to talk, but the good
isn't this
people are not?
how Stephen Avery got a new fiancée?
Well, that's what we're going to talk. We're going to talk about it. So let's move on. Quick thoughts on one last thing. Anyone here feel bad that Kathleen Zellner is trying to prove an ineffective assistance counsel case against my boyfriend Dean Strang and his partner Jerry Buting? Anyone feel bad about that?
I did a little bit, and then I was like, oh. And I actually inquired of some of my defense attorney friends, and they were
don't
like,
care.
yeah. No, they said, but they're like, yeah, but this is showing that they should have done more work the first time around in terms of getting experts to come in. I'm like, well, financially, they may not have been able to.
That's right.
So I did feel a little, they may not have had these unlimited resources or experts that are willing to consult because they want to be affiliated with you. So I felt bad.
I do think that this show does a good job at first of making us feel bad about that. Then it cuts to them saying, like, that's what we would do.
Yes.
If we were also picking up this case, because that's what you do when you're trying to get someone post-fiction relief. But then also, like...
hate the game, not the player.
They also show... But she does do a good job, I think, showing examples of them doing things in court and then not following the thread. And that happens a bunch of times.
But it's trial strategy.
I
mean,
know.
Is any of that, like, really...
I know.
That would have changed the case?
She's just really, really, in terms of the amount of work she does, is on a whole different plane.
Laura Bricker, she bought a Toyota RAV4.
I know. And blood. The blood. I'm like, where is she getting all this blood?
But she also embraces the theory that it was a setup more than they did.
Well, no, I think they embraced that. They were the ones, remember, who did the whole thing where the blood had been taken from the tube. They totally thought the evidence was planted. That was their theory.
But aren't they the ones who said, when you're saying the cops set him up, like that's not usually a winning argument in court?
Yeah.
They did, but they also believe the cops set him up because they're the ones who introduced the tampered stuff.
They kind of played with that, but that wasn't their, the main thrust,
right?
I don't think. I mean, they just thought he was innocent and they could get him off as being innocent. Whereas Kathleen Zellner's like, in the end, it's like a conspiracy of thousands to set them up.
Well, to be fair, Strang and Buting did go on a national tour. And they did say in front of live audiences that they believe that the police set Stephen Avery up for this crime. I know that they did. That's what they actually believed. They just didn't think it would work in the courtroom. So that is, right. I think it's legitimate to say that was strategy. So Kevin, let's talk about the scenes with the Avery's family.
Yeah, I think that's the emotional center of this.
The way too long emotional center of this documentary?
Well, okay, so... All right, so we have to acknowledge
there
that
was a
they
lot
got a
of
deal.
filler.
Yeah, there is a lot of filler. The documentarians got a deal for 10 episodes.
And they had to fill 10 episodes.
And, I mean, there's really like 6 episodes
Don't you think
here.
it's a trend with Netflix? A lot of these series we talked about have just been too long.
They've been too long. Yeah, they've been trying to. They have been trying to do 45 minutes of work
Let's
in
be real.
hour and a
Episode
half.
10 of this series could have been the whole series.
It could have been, but yeah, I mean, there were some things there. I mean, again, I think you like the parents. You know, it's like trying to turn on the stove, like the frickin'
Dolores.
frack, the two of them.
What do you want it on?
Is it hot? Is the burner hot?
Put it on.
Yeah. Is that the right one for that?
Huh?
Is that the right one for that burner?
They're like your parents. They remind me so much of your parents.
How can you get in the car and drive 6 hours to your son's prison? I didn't bring my
your
wallet.
license.
Yeah, it just but again, since we don't get to see Stephen Avery, it makes it hard to create any sort of emotional bond with him as a character. But you can do it with this family, and the whole idea that time is ticking, wears on them. We see that,
Right. Now, Toby, detail that I found myself wondering about, and I don't know if you noticed this kind of thing. Stephen Avery is in this huge Shawshank-like prison that is apparently sitting in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Is that weird?
I was thinking about kids throwing around a football or whatever, and it just goes over the wall.
Yes.
Fuck.
Throw it back. Throw it back.
Because when that happened in my house, it was you had to jump into the neighbor's yard and get it. Yeah, it was totally weird. It's you park on the street and then you walk around to the entrance to this prison.
Hey, Toby, drugs get in that prison somehow. It might as well be a kid's football.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to put those kids to work. Can I just, one thing about all that Avery family footage is that I found myself during the time that I was watching it, when I was going and doing stuff by myself, taking out the garbage or, bringing in the groceries from the car. And I would just kind of imagine what it would look like if you were playing that kind of plaintive music in the background.
Cellos.
And it was this is the Ball's family's existence now. Now that young Jacob is in jail.
Would you be wearing overalls?
As a dad trudges with his groceries to his door.
A lot of B-roll.
A lot of B-roll.
Yeah, it's if you put that music behind it, it's like all these sort of kind of normal things.
Everyone's life becomes tragic.
Really fraught.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
There's a lot in the garage.
So
a lot
much.
of lugging
Oh,
around,
God.
and his poor dad can hardly walk. And I'm just like,
Yeah, we've
oh,
seen this
God.
already.
We have.
Yeah,
It's
you know.
we
He's
get
like
it.
walking sideways. It's just so sad.
It's like, we get it. Netflix, we get it.
Yeah.
It is. It's
It's
bad.
a high school essay that's supposed to be 10 pages long and really only is 6.
Yes.
And so it's
Yeah.
very,
No,
very,
totally.
very, very good.
Well,
How
that's
good
just-
is it? It's very, very, very good.
Can we talk about one part that was very, very, very good? We need to talk about Stephen Avery's lady problems.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so Stephen Avery obviously has his longer-term girlfriend, Sandy, who, through the magic of graphics, I came to finally realize is 6 years younger than his mother.
Yeah.
And that's his long-term girlfriend. And then they break up and enter luscious, lying Lynn, the grifter girlfriend who, while being driven to visit him in prison, says, "I've never seen so much agriculture." And then tells the documentary makers, quote,
I knew in my soul it was going to be a part of my life. And I knew that if there was another season of the documentary, that I was going to be in it as Stephen's girlfriend.
"Oh, we see you, Lynn. We see you." Laura, what did you think of this chapter of the documentary that featured Stephen Avery's lady problems?
I mean, it's not surprising because you hear about people that have the prison pen pals. And then, I always find it interesting that people that get married when they're in prison and they've never actually met or touched or anything. I'm like, to each their own. But I'm watching, he's getting all these proposals. And then this woman shows up. I'm like, well, she's pretty attractive. And I'm like, oh, this is
Kevin
really
and I both been like, whoa.
Yeah.
I was like, boom, chicka, bow, bow. I'm
I
like,
can see why
what
you
is
would
going
make
on
the switch.
here? And then she's driving and she's very well dressed in her very nice car. And then out comes the story where she really just wants to be in the documentary. And I'm like, but they kind of just dropped that. And then we never saw her again. And I'm like, well, are they still engaged?
No. She went on Dr. Phil. Remember?
I guess, but they didn't include that. Did I miss that?
Yes.
Did I fall asleep during that
shit.
part?
Laura, you missed the juiciest part of this whole damn thing if you missed that. Toby, you didn't miss that part, did you? Where she went on Dr. Phil?
Yeah, and she's like afraid for her life.
Yes.
What?
The whole
I missed that.
She basically broke up with him on Dr. Phil. And that's how he watched it in prison. That's how he found out. Oh,
the whole thing was kind of weird. He's like, "Yeah, I kissed her. I French kissed her."
That's right,
dude. I don't want to know that.
Oh, I French kissed her. Oh,
I never felt this way before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like alarm bell should be going off, dude.
Yeah, well, this to me is like the weirdness around Stephen Avery is we've been told by these filmmakers that his IQ is low, right? Not as low as Brendan's, but low. But he also seems at times so whip smart bright. He's filed a ton of his own legal paperwork. He's become like a legal expert. You hear him on the phone with Zellner, and he kind of seems like really aware of the parts of the process. He uses the right legal terminology. He's really with it. He's like able to sort of make very cogent sort of, conversations.
Yeah.
But I think so in many parts of this. And then he's just like, I mean, I guess that's just sort of part of being isolated and in prison, but you just realize like, oh no, he's still Stephen Avery. He only got picked up by a grifter. Anyway, well, let's talk about the later episodes before we wrap this up, because I think Zellner's evidentiary storyline gets a lot better in the latter part of the series. The evidence tests she does seem more grounded in reality. We're not talking about brain fingerprinting. What we're talking about is, I think something compelling. Lack of schmutz on the swab for the hood latch. Like, it should have black schmutz on it. A plausible theory about the source of the planted DNA, but please never say groin swab ever again in front of me. A compelling reason why Officer Coburn called in Teresa's plate before the car was discovered. Remember that detail from episode 1? She actually finds a potential explanation for that.
Yeah.
The bullet tests. Hello, Kathleen Zellner shooting a gun. Very exciting.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. And my favorite...
That's part of the bullshit, though.
I understand, but maybe the way that we saw it was bullshit. But, the evidence was there. Real expert. I looked them up. Her experts are all legit experts. They're legit. But my actual favorite piece of boring evidence that she found, because it was boring, it was the most compelling, was that printed out Outlook calendar with the handwritten notes that matched the phone calls.
That was, I was like, whoa. Yeah, that was amazing.
It was. So, Laura, do you think that she's making a better case in these later episodes with all of this more grounded evidence?
I do, because in the first half, I was just like, yeah, because she gives this whole, like, I don't take on clients unless they're innocent. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good for the documentary, but like, the percentage of clients that are actually really innocent is, like she wouldn't have any clients, but I don't, but it was made for good TV. But some of her theories in the beginning were like, just so far fetched to me. Like, I'm like, even with your experts, I just can't get my head around the fact that cops are going to go scrape off blood from the sink and then plant it somewhere else. I'm like, that just doesn't even.
How much blood has to be in the sink so it's still liquid? 20 minutes after he,
yeah,
but they're thorough. She went in and took that sink her damn self.
Yeah. We didn't hear anything more about that.
When we get into the second part, I definitely like her experts and her line of reasoning and her theories. I was like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense to me. Like, yeah, okay, so the guy at the quarry next door and the police not wanting him to tell his story. We've got the computer Brady violation with
that fucking Brady violation theory was so chilling because it was like, I mean, what else could it have been? I mean, I think she nailed that one.
But the one that started it all, like you said, was this thing about the calendar, because she goes through this and it makes sense. And I'm like, this is when it started to make sense. I'm like, oh, so if she prints out the calendar and she writes on it, it's the day of, and it would have been with her. So how the hell did he get it? I mean, I'm like, that was very compelling. And that really didn't add up that he just mysteriously had this calendar, because it wouldn't have happened.
Well, it added up because the phone calls matched the things she wrote.
Yeah.
The phone calls, like, they show that this person called her and then she wrote a thing that she would have written down when she talked to that person. I thought that was the most compelling. The stupid paper freaking Outlook calendar. I mean, there's blood, there's a RAV4, there's all this like showy stuff. And then I'm like, I cannot believe this whole thing is turning for me on a printed out fucking Outlook calendar page, which is like the most like dumb.
Well, I kind of feel like, okay, so that's compelling, how does that fit into her sort of alternative theory?
It means she left the property. That's what it means. It means she left the Avery property because she would have written those things after she left.
No, but it also means that guy Villegas, or whatever his last name is, had access to the car before she was found. Like, I was kind of with her for a while, and I still think she's made a pretty good case that it wasn't Avery. But I think her alternative theory is weird and a little bit tough to. It's just so. It's like I'm going to get everybody who could possibly be a suspect and have them all be a part of the file. It's like what is it? Murder on the Orient Express. Like, it wasn't one of you; it was all of you.
Yeah, there's still 5 people.
I don't disagree with you at all on that. I really don't. I think that Villegas, and I think that she kind of goes there later, but less at the beginning. He clearly was helping the cops with whatever it was they were doing. We don't know what his intentions were. We don't know why he did. But to me, I think she makes a good case that they pulled him into saying, like, help us out, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he was the one who moved the car. Maybe he wasn't, like, who cares?
Yeah, you also could just been appropriately helping.
Who cares? That's insane. Like, why would the cops be like, hey, dude, can you move your dead ex-girlfriend's car?
Because you know how these cops are, Toby.
Because they would trust that guy? They would trust somebody they don't even know to, like, be part of the biggest conspiracy?
Like, why don't they just do it themselves, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, all this stuff is like, well, you know, there were 2 guys who did this one thing, and then the cops, without knowing it was them, stumbled upon the car, and they, like, covered it up to make it look like Stephen Avery did it. And, oh, yeah, by the way, because, you know, Villegas had this calendar, and he must have been a part of it, the cops asked him to move the car. And then it's like, well, then, like, wait, who burned the remains? Like, what?
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, it just seemed crazy.
The theory of who did it was convoluted, and how they did it was convoluted. But there were parts that sung to me like, they rang out like there's something here.
Yes.
That shows the cover up happened. That to me was the most compelling parts. That to me, that the parts that showed the police malfeasance were the most compelling parts, and that like. The calendar thing was huge to me. Fucking groin DNA. Like, stop it with the saying that, but like all this clean DNA showing up on things, which is insane.
Yeah. Well, the places they got her DNA.
Her vibrator.
I was gonna say.
It's like, stop it with the don't show it, like blur that out. Making a Murderer, people, please.
No, there was definitely in the second half. I mean, you had this part, and then you had the woman that was the coroner. That was like enraged me. The woman that was the coroner that wasn't even allowed to go out, and they were threatening to arrest her, and she actually had jurisdiction over them. I'm like, what is this? I mean, that was super fishy.
Huh? What? We're getting another reading on the Richter scale.
No, that was the part when I really lost it, when that poor woman came on, and I'm like, how did they not talk about this in the first season? Do I not remember this?
No, it wasn't in the first season.
And I'm like, oh my God. And she's telling this story, and I'm like, you're kidding me, right? You are the boss, and they won't let you go to the crime scene, and they're telling you it's because there's a lawsuit that you're not even involved in, but they're out there? What the fuck?
But did the coroner from the other county go? Because
I don't know.
Because that was the story given to us. Is we're not having any county officials go because of this conflict of interest.
But Lank and Coburn were there, and they were named in the first
everybody else.
But we already
lawsuit.
know that that's an issue.
Right.
But we know it's an issue with 2 people.
Right. All right. So we all know this is like a cluster.
Yeah, it is.
It is. And then I think that we could go back and forth on arguing the merits of Kathleen Zellner's like theories this way or that. I think the final question here is, before we review this, like, where are we on Stephen Avery's innocence or guilt now after watching the second part of Making a Murderer? Toby, where are you now after seeing everything that Kathleen Zellner showed us?
So I think she makes a compelling case that there's a lot of evidence that it wasn't him. So I was with her there. When she gave her alternative theory of the crime, which she feels like is like the key, I just thought that was so insane that was the best that she could come up with. It started to trouble me again. My guess, I don't even want to guess, because I don't trust the filmmakers, quite honestly.
Yep.
The way the film has got it set up, it seems as though there's enough evidence to cause real doubt about his guilt. I don't trust the filmmakers enough. So I'm still sort of like, I don't have any strong feeling.
What about you, Laura? Where are you on Stephen Avery right now?
It's tough. I mean, I feel very strongly about Brendan Dassey. With Stephen Avery, I feel like there was a lot of unfairness in the way his case was handled. I really don't know who did what. I don't know if it was him. I don't know if it was somebody else. I don't think the case was handled properly. One of the things that really I started percolating on was this computer that had all the torture porn on it. I was thinking about child suggestibility people that talk about, and I was like, maybe this is where Brendan Dassey, just being exposed to looking at this, concocted this wild story because his brother was always looking at this stuff, and who knows who did what. But I mean, that could be where this whole idea came from.
Of shackles and stuff, you mean?
Yeah, because all that stuff was on, all the crazy porn that was on the computer that his brother, that it seems like his brother looked at a lot. So that's where he could have seen things like that to be like, yeah, that's what happened. Not that, you know what I mean? It just seemed
that's a good point.
Because there's this whole series of research into children and how suggestible they are and at younger ages, but it's little things like that can suddenly, I saw a picture and all of a sudden it's a whole story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what about Stephen Avery, but I feel like it's definitely highlighted just that this case was just handled super improperly, again, that we already knew. So yeah.
Where I am at is I think Stephen Avery didn't do it. And I do think that the police planted evidence. I really do. Only because from other cases, it's not just this case. These cops are just they're not acting in good faith. And the prosecutor at this time was not acting in good faith. I think the Brady violation thing was really stunning. The way that they she does it very clearly. He provided the stuff so he can say it wasn't a Brady violation, but it was because they mislabeled it. I think that's fascinating. I don't know if I buy her ultimate Bobby Dassey theory. I think the moment in the documentary where I felt like Kathleen Zellner, it felt right to me. And I know that's a dumb metric. Oh, it felt right to me. But when she made a comment about halfway through the series where she said she believes it's not that the cops did everything. It's that the murderer did a lot of stuff and then helped the cops. And that felt right to me. It felt like the murderer was probably also involved in the investigation of the murder in some way. Maybe they were a witness at the trial. Maybe they were somebody who helped on the search for the car. Maybe they were, I don't want to use names, but that felt to me closer than this very elaborate Brendan and his stepdad theory, which I don't know how the stepdad is actually ended up being fingered, but whatever. I mean, Bobby and his stepdad. But yeah, that felt the closest to me. So I don't think Stephen Avery did it. And I think the thing Kathleen Zellner says about innocent clients is the testing that he's been willing to put himself through. We all know that lie detectors are total BS in terms of evidence. We also know that a lot of liars don't want to take lie detector tests, right?
Yeah.
And Avery is willing to put himself through all of these tests, which I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying he's a perfect person, but I don't think he did this crime. Where are you on him, Kevin?
I didn't see anything that convinced me that he is innocent. I don't know if he did it. I don't believe the elaborate police conspiracy theory of moving cars, planting DNA, putting blood in. Certainly, I don't see why they would believe there wouldn't be actual physical evidence at that crime scene if they believed that he was the murderer. I'm really not buying it. I'm sorry.
Would you hire Kathleen Zellner to defend you?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, that's my question. Would you let her be your lawyer?
Sure, yeah, because
in a hot minute,
because you want if you want to get out, and so. But I'm just not buying it. She points out a lot of interesting things about different pieces of evidence, but they're all separate puzzle pieces that don't.
She doesn't tell a good story. Is that what you're saying? She's doing what she can accuse Strang of of. She's not telling a story that convinced you.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well, let's do what we do. Let's tell our listeners if they haven't yet checked out Making a Murderer Season 2. Should they? I'm sure if they've listened to this whole podcast, they probably have. Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you. Thumbs up or thumbs down on Season 2 of Making a Murderer?
I'm thumbs up. You should watch it. It's definitely interesting to get this window into the defense. I love Brandon's super earnest, dedicated lawyers. I love Kathleen Zellner. Like I said, waiting for her to get her scotch and her cigar and like shoot her gun. She's pretty badass. There is a lot of filler, so I think there are times where I kind of was like, okay, let's move this along. But overall, it's a really interesting look at the case.
All right, so Toby, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down on the second season of Making a Murderer?
I'm a little bit conflicted. I thought parts of it were really interesting. I think if it had been half as long, it would be an easy thumbs up. I think there was a ton of filler. I think I've sort of said my piece about how I don't really trust the filmmakers. That being said, there's some really interesting inside look about the way the sort of post-conviction stuff is handled. So, I give it the very, I don't want to give it a thumbs down, so I'm giving it a thumbs up. But, if it was it's a thumb not very far from sideways.
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up, but I just want to say if I were ever happen to be sitting at like an airport bar and I found myself sitting next to an executive from Netflix, I would give them this advice because this is like the 7th thing we've watched that I felt this way about. You got to let go of the idea of X number of episodes for these series because as one-sided and as whatever as this was, the character portrait of Kathleen Zellner alone in fighting this case would have been an outstanding 4 or 5 part series. Like, she is a super compelling protagonist, a very controversial figure. Like, we just have so much to say that we even didn't get to about who she is and how she works. That was all the good stuff. And we had to wait, and sometimes in episodes, like 10 minutes to get to the next scene of that, or 20 minutes. And, all the stuff in the later part of the series was the great stuff. And there was a million things in the middle that could have been cut. So Netflix, please, if you're listening, get these people out of these like 10 episode contracts. Just say season 1, season 2, season 3, and make them 5, make them 6, make them 7. It's fine. It's thumbs up for me. But if you haven't seen it yet, just be prepared to do some fast forwarding through a lot of people giving people perms, people sitting around at kitchen tables. Like, that stuff did not need to be there. We could have had some of it, but not all
Trial
of
prep.
it. Yes.
Nothing like watching trial prep through the window of a conference
when you
room.
can't hear anything.
Can't hear anything. Watching them back and forth, yeah.
Nothing like watching people driving with scenery passing out the window.
I want to know how I can get a driver.
Me too.
I was like, why does she have a driver?
I also, by the way, really want that winter hat. Kevin, what about you?
I
know.
I'm very close to where Toby is. I'm a thumbs up, but sort of barely. I don't think you have to rush to watch this. But if you're a completist, of course, you're going to want to see season 2. The only thing I'm missing from, on the Brendan Dassey storyline is I really wanted to see the end, the disappointment from the attorneys.
Yeah.
We followed them all the way through, and that's really the kind of reaction that I wanted to see. How did they take that, knowing that, this was her life's work, and essentially they're saying it's over.
Yeah.
How does she deal with that? That's what I really wanted to see.
She's so likable, is she not, Laura Ridinger?
She is. I think that, there was a lot of filler. I think all these little scenes could have been tightened up, and I think they would have been just as fine. Avery's case remains, very interesting. There's talk about, will we do season 3? And I'm like, no. I'm good.
Please.
Can season 3 be about Zellner defending somebody else?
Just stop.
It could be.
Would you watch that?
Yes, she would probably look fantastic.
She would.
Especially
she always looks fantastic.
Especially if she's wearing dress pant yoga pants from Beta Brand.
I think Kathleen Zellner would rock the dress pant yoga pants from Beta Brand.
I think she has some.
I think she might.
She could wear it with a nice
boucle jacket.
Yes, exactly. Then she could go out to the Avery property, shooter 22 through the door. I think she would absolutely rock the Beta Brand dress pant yoga pants. Remember, these are not yoga pants that look like dress pants. They're not dress pants that feel like yoga pants. They are the
dress
pant yoga pants. Perfect for work. You'll feel so comfortable. They have the faux zipper in the pockets, the front button,
everything
the belt
dress
loops.
Pant yoga pants should have.
Right. They come in boot cut, straight leg, crop, leggings, as well as a variety of colors.
Patterns.
Black, navy, gray, khaki, seasonal, limited edition colors. The new ones every month.
That's right.
When we got these folks to come on the podcast, you were super excited.
I was super excited. I love my dress pant yoga
Because
pants.
you already owned them.
I did. I wear them to work all the time. On those days, like I have a very casual workplace. You know, I can wear jeans a lot at work and wear whatever. But on those days where I need to look like I care, I wear my dress pant yoga
feel
pants.
Like you do, yeah.
I look a lot like I care. I still feel like I don't. I love the dress pant yoga pants.
Visit betabrand.com and use Rebecca's code CRIME to get 20% off yours. Millions of women agree these are the most comfortable pants you'll ever wear to work. That's betabrand.com, betabrand.com. Use code CRIME to get 20% off your dress pant yoga pants.
What else you got, Kevin?
Well, it's the holiday season coming up. Can you really believe that? November, we got a plan. What about a very thoughtful gift? What can you give the loved one? Give them the gift of an Audible membership.
That is a kick-ass gift.
And right now is the best time to do it with our special offer. Remember, you can have access to an unbeatable selection of audiobooks, including bestsellers, motivation, mysteries, thrillers, memoirs, and more. You can choose 3 titles every month. You can get 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals that you can't hear anywhere else. I've been listening to the X-Files Audible originals with David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, Mitch Pileggi. Really great. I mean, I'm a big X-Files fan. The Smoking Man's in it, too. So I'm kind of staying away from those actual books that I should be reading. I'm getting into the originals. You can listen on any device, anytime, anywhere, at home, at the gym, or on your commute. And you just get them on the go. Enjoy easy audiobook exchanges, rollover credits, and an audiobook library you keep forever, even when you cancel. So right now, for a limited time, you can get 3 months of Audible for just $6.95 a month. That's more than half off the regular price.
That's a really good deal.
Yeah. Give yourself the gift of listening while you're at it.
It's the best.
Give it to yourself and
I'm
someone
obsessed.
on your list. I'm on my list. For more, go to audible.com/crime or text the word crime to 500-500. That's Audible, audible.com/crime or text crime to 500-500.
It's the joy of getting. I'm just looking back. I'm sorry. I was looking back to some of the notes that Laura and Toby sent me, and it was like, Laura's note, Stephen Avery as a sex symbol. I'm just not sure what to make of this. All right. Now it's time to move on to our favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. A former New Jersey school superintendent has pleaded guilty to public defecation after being accused of being a serial pooper who left dookies on a high school football field. After his arrest, the papers dubbed Thomas Tremaglini the pooperintendent. But his lawyer's not taking this crap. He insists police have their facts wrong. He claims this was the number 1 time that Tremaglini did a number 2 on the field. The attorney says the man had a case of runner's diarrhea while jogging through the playing field. He claims he did his duty behind the bleachers and cleaned up after himself. He says Tremaglini is not responsible for any other turd bombs on the field and has the running watch GPS data to prove he wasn't there. Of course he does, because all those frickin' runners love to see where they ran, don't they?
The police planted DNA evidence.
All right, panel. Tremaglini paid a $500 fine to wipe up his legal mess.
Oh.
What other punishment should he have faced? Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you.
Well, it's reminding me when I was in college, one of the fraternities for their initiation for the new class, they had to watch like Christmas Vacation by Chevy Chase over and over until they could memorize every line. So I'm going to suggest that he needs to watch American Vandal season 2 while drinking kombucha.
Nice.
To help him stay regular.
What about you, Toby? What other punishment should the pooperintendent have faced for his alleged crime?
I would just withhold the TP for a month.
Kevin, I'm going to say that the pooperintendent who suffered allegedly from runner's diarrhea should have to, I don't know, listen to some runners talk about how much they love running and an endless loop. Like,
so he could throw up too?
There's like a Geneva Convention thing about that.
Kevin, what about you? What do you think his other punishment should have been?
Well, obviously he should go out and have to fertilize the field.
With actual fertilizer?
Well, yeah, Scots.
All right, we should probably end it on that note. But before we do, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We do have a cat of the week this week, and this one's for Kevin. It is from Jennifer Burnell. Please consider Marcel Burnell Cat of the Week. 16-year-old short-haired domestic cat with diabetes, kidney, and heart disease. A badass kitty monster, and this is wise for Kevin. It is a Red Sox fan who has comforted and tormented her for 15 years. Go Sox. P.S. She's married to a Dodgers fan. We are fine. We coexist. And Marcel has his little Red Sox outfit on while watching the game.
Oh, Kevin, that sounds like your kind of cat.
Yeah.
You don't even like cats, but you would like that cat, wouldn't you?
We could coexist.
All right, Laura Bricker. If people want to submit to you their dogs or cats or hedgehogs or koalas or other animals to be cat/pet of the week, how can they find you online?
At Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, if people want to tweet to you to commiserate how much they also don't trust the documentarians behind Making a Murderer, how can they find you online?
At TobyBallNH.
And Kevin Flynn, if people want to reach you, how can they do that?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow this show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, and I encourage you to join the amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. You can find it by going through our regular old Facebook page. It's probably the easiest way. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, and support this show on patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, and you will get access to Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast and Laura Bricker's Rage Walking True Crime Fitness Fun Group. You can also get a free month of Stitcher Premium when you go to stitcherpremium.com/crime and use the code CRIME. When you do, you'll get access to Married with Podcast, me and Kevin's other little show that we make in this closet. Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with permission. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our basement where I do my nails to try and look as baller as Kathleen Zellner. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks for listening. We will catch you later.
I'm traumatized. Ken Kratz is following me on Twitter.
What?
No. What the fuck? So I looked up Kathleen Zellner, and it says other people you should follow. And it says Ken Kratz, and then it says Ken Kratz follows you, and then it says followed by no one you know.
Oh.
And then it says attorney, legal consultant, author of Avery, the case against Stephen Avery. But he's like posting all this like crazy... The national media couldn't wait to bury this. I'm like, oh my God, what do you... is he following you guys?
Is Ken Kratz? He's Ken at 7...
Yeah.
He follows me! Ah! Oh my God!
Why is he following us?
Why?
Toby,
stop following me!
Toby, does he follow you?
I'm looking
so
right
disturbed.
Now. Oh, yeah, he does. He does follow.
No.
First Scaramucci and now Ken Kratz?
Who's next? Oh, my God.
How many people is he following?
107 following only
people.
107 people, and he's following us?
He follows me, too.
Oh, Colin Miller.
He follows Colin Miller. He follows Susan Simpson. The four of us are among... We're like 4% of his followers.
We're social media influencers on him. I mean, imagine how thin his news feed is.
He follows Laura Richards and Jim Clemente. He follows Bob Ruff. He follows President Trump. He follows Undisclosed. He follows everybody who hates him. And President Trump.
And the Milwaukee Brewers.
and the Milwaukee Brewers.
Partners in Crime Media.
Check out Wild Fang, a feminist fashion brand that's here to take down the patriarchy and is committed to giving back. That's right, Kevin. Wild Fang is female-founded and women-run, offering gender-smashing styles that borrow from the boys. A percentage of every purchase at wildfang.com goes to charity, and they raise hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to fight for your rights. Go to wildfang.com and use code CRIME for 25% off. That's WILDFANG.com and use CRIME for 25% off.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.